Thank you for joining us on this mini-series called Beyond Surviving. As a part of National Child Abuse Prevention Month, we wanted to bring awareness and have the hard conversations around surviving sexual assault, thriving, and actively healing.
Yes, your voice matters, and we want to hear from you. In this series, we will offer you some tools and resources to help you along your healing journey. Join host Tammy from Sexually Saved and Larissa from Journey to Free. Welcome to the show. It's time to reassign the shame and speak.
I just thought of it, so no worries.
Welcome to the Beyond Surviving mini-series. We are so grateful to yet again come here to talk about all the things as it relates to support. So hello to everyone. For those of you who do not know us, my name is Tammy. I am an intimacy and relationship coach. I teach women how to understand where they fit into the equation of God and sexuality. And then we have over here Larissa. Hey, Larissa.
Hey, Tammy. Hello, everyone. My name is Larissa. I am an author, a survivor empowerment coach, and a whole lot of things that goes with that. But in addition to that, I'm also a third generation child sexual abuse survivor. And that is the point of, or the reason Tammy and I are coming together for this month to speak, because Tammy is also a survivor, to speak on the topic of support today.
Yes. And we're not just survivors, but we are out here thriving, being an advocate for all of you wonderful people who are watching, who has experienced abuse, or if you even know someone who has experienced abuse. We're here because we understand that information is important and we want to spread it. We want to share it. We want to help you to understand a little bit of what we experience so that, you know, you can take away from that and hopefully it would be beneficial to you. But yes, I forgot to say that I'm an author and all these other things as well, a wife, a mother, all these good things, right?
Wonderful. And why are we doing it this month? Because April happens to be Child Abuse Prevention Month, as well as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So, support month.
Yeah. And in case you guys haven't watched the previous podcasts or miniseries, for me, this is actually a big deal because I've spoken about, you know, the abuse that has happened to me, but not on the scale of what we're doing it right now, right? And so I just felt like this conviction where, you know, it's time, right? It's time to help other people. It's time. And I've gotten to that space of where, you know, I want to speak on it and it's not affecting me. So I'm not becoming depressed or all of these different things that happens as a result of, you know, the trauma that you experience. And I'm in a good place right now. And I was only able to do that because of the type of support that I have gotten through our journey. And we're going to talk a little bit about what support looks like, what it looked like for us. And it might not look the same for you, but you'd be able to understand what support is. So let's just get into it. So let's talk about it. What does support look like? Right.
So, as Tammy mentioned, support varies. It's almost as different for everyone as the healing journey itself, right? So support looks different for everyone. And it's funny that you mentioned that, Tammy, because I know that as much as we talk and we put such emphasis on the trauma and the manifestation, how it comes up in our lives, I know that our experiences happen at different periods of our life. And when I say the experience, I'm talking about the fact that, of course, the experience you had around sexual assault, but also the when you started talking, because we were at much different ages in our life when we started talking about our stories. So for you, as being a child, when this happened and you started talking about that, what did that look like for you in your childhood years?
So just, to reiterate the story, I started getting molested when I was 8, and I was raped at 13, and then molestations happened after that. And I always felt like the target for the male figure or whatnot. And after, I didn't really talk about anything when I'm 8, because in my mind, I still didn't process what was happening. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't understand the scale or the level of how much damage that would have done. After I was raped, because that was kind of like it was a traumatic event for me. And then molested after that, like that was also traumatic, especially because I was a little bit older. And these are things where my mind is already in the space where I know this is not right. It was something that I did not want. And now I'm being forced in situations that were extremely uncomfortable. And I felt all these different emotions and all these different things. And so for me, I didn't want to talk about it. And I didn't want to bring these things up because they made me so uncomfortable to talk about. But after the rape happens, let's go to that. After I was raped, I had spoken to a cousin, and we were kind of the same age. So it really wasn't me speaking to anyone who could really understand that something traumatic had just happened to me. It was met in a way that was kind of like, well, you just had sex. Like it was supposed to be like a cool thing, but it wasn't. So even after that, I was a little bit conflicted, right? Like, is this, are we downplaying this? Am I downplaying this? Should I downplay what happened? And, thinking about the event that happened, like it was a clear no, like I said, no 100 times, and it was a forced type of situation. So, but even after that, I was still questioning as to whether or not I was violated, right? And so after that interaction, I didn't know whether or not I should talk about it at all. I really didn't. I really didn't say anything. I didn't say anything until, it was quite some time later. I think it was like maybe a year is the time frame. And the only reason why I had said something is because my sister was asking me about, our family. And she was like, has anybody in the family violated you? And this time, it wasn't about the rape. It was about the molestation, because I had an uncle who had molested me. And she asked me, and I was like, yes. I said, this uncle did this. And she said, oh, wow, because he used to rape me too. Right. And so after that came out, and my mom, and she was talking to us, she was like, this is the only type of stuff that happens in movies. Like, parents really don't think about these things happening to their children. Right. And so when she approached us with the situation, I was like, well, I might as well get it all out on the table, because I was raped too. Right. So that's how the rape or the revealing of all of that came. And in terms of the support, I don't think that they really understood the trauma that I had experienced. Like we went through the procedures of what you have to go through in order to file a report. We went down to the crisis center and spoke with one of the counselors there, and we went to the police station and did the whole police thing, and we had to go through the whole court process. And during this whole time, I really wasn't saying anything. I really wasn't saying much because I was so uncomfortable. I felt like I was being re-traumatized, and I didn't really get the support that I needed, because I don't think that it was understood that I needed it. I was functioning differently, but I was also functioning, right? And so I think that, sometimes people get confused because they're like, oh, you're just walking around and you look normal, so you are normal, right? And so that it's not played, it's kind of downplayed, because people don't really understand that there are things that are happening in this brain right here that is, being triggered all the time. And then you start having these mental and, things going on, and you don't understand why. And so when it comes to support, I didn't really have that. I think that, like many people that don't talk about it, you might find yourself in like relationships, and then you start saying, okay, well, I'm going to open up to this person, that you're dating. And, this is one of those things where you're making that emotional connection with somebody who you think that you're going to love or think that you're going to be in love with. And so you share that with them. And so for me, I think that was one of the biggest things, is that I was finding support in the wrong things, because they end up being toxic situations. And because I was deeply connecting with this traumatic event that I wasn't sharing with the world, I was getting that support, but it was the wrong type of support, right? Because it was met with toxic behavior. And now I was trying to do what I could to stay in toxicity, as opposed to, not be there. Right. And
Right.
then it went from that to just all over the place. Like I like we'll be here all day talking about all of the mess that was going on in my head. But when it comes to support, for me, the support didn't come until years later. And that's when, I understood, I changed my life around, and then I, encountered God. And that's when the support came, because I had to learn how to find support in God. And with that, I got therapy. And then I understood how the dots were connecting. And then I understood, now this is how I cope with these things that I didn't even know that was quite fully wrong with me. So support for me was a little iffy,
Well, technically, it sounds like you didn't have any support at all.
Yeah.
And this is something that we know for a fact now. Support is extremely crucial
Yeah.
when has been abused, and it traumatized child definitely needs support for several reasons, right? Because, and if you don't get support, what ends up happening is it creates, as you touched on, the mental and the psychological and the emotional distresses and things that you go through. It is hard. And it's the only thing that honestly could help a child to move forward. It's getting that support and starting that journey. But as you touched on what it looked like for you at that age, like you, I did not have any support at all, because the molestation started for me at 5 years old. And when I spoke about it, there was no support. I was told to be quiet. And when the rape began, the same thing happened, no help. I was just told to be hush and keep it a secret. And because I did not get any of that support, I decided not to talk about this at all. And so, of course, it wasn't until many, many years later when I finally decided to break that silence. And in previous episodes, we spoke about, well, I touched on how I started speaking because I found out that my abuser had gone on to abuse others. Now, talking about it, coming out and letting the world know the story, the world know about the story, in that moment, I think because I was so not just upset, shocked at the fact that this had actually happened. But to be honest, I was just pissed. I was literally pissed, and I think justifiably so. And I know that I needed to do something about it. But even in that space of knowing that I needed to do something about it, I didn't know what that looked like.
Yeah.
Right. And there was so much fear associated with that, because yes, over the years of not speaking, and we all know there's fears associated with and attached to all of that. But in that moment, and I started speaking at 30, I was in my 30s. I want to say about 35. And when I started telling my story and all of that, now when the backlash started coming is when I realized, no, this is much harder than I thought it was going to be. It, don't get me wrong, it was hard. It was hard. All of it is hard. But um what saved me or helped me tremendously came in the my support came in the form of, first, my brother, two of my brothers, and I have four, but two of my brothers actually, not only went with me to Jamaica to make the report, but would sit with me. I could talk to them. And this was the first time they were knowing about what had happened to, well, let me say us,
Mhm.
because my story spans generation. So it was the first time they were hearing about what happened to my mom, myself, my sister. And
Yeah.
so amazingly, you know, one of my brothers, he was still in that space of being afraid because he knew what was going to happen as a result. But two out of four of them, and then my youngest brother, they were all behind me, not to mention my sister. My sister was like not only a sounding board, but she was just one of them
Mhm.
people that I needed that kept saying to me, you have to do this, Riz, you have to do this. And so that's how it showed up for me first. What
Yeah.
also helped me a great deal was one of my aunts that happens to be a survivor as well from the same person. She decided, no, she had had enough. It has had been too many years, and she decided she was joining forces and she was going to start speaking, not just speaking, but she was showing up to court. She was, we were aligned and we were doing this. And I think without her, even though my mom was also a part of this journey, but that's a different story
Yeah.
in of itself. But I think because of not I think, I know for a fact, because of the fact that my brothers, especially one of my brothers that had gone with me to Jamaica, he went with me physically, and then having the support of my aunt
Mhm.
empowered me to say, you know what, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And after I got that, reassurance that I'm not alone in this journey, it was uphill from there. It got to the point where in the process when it started getting extremely difficult with
Yeah.
another story, but threats and all of that coming into play,
Yeah.
some people were backing off. But at that point, I had already gotten to the place only with the strength of God where I didn't care. I
Yeah.
didn't care at that point if I had support, yes or no. But to get me to that process and get me over that slump, that's what it looked like for me. So my family, well, some, let me make that clear. Some of my family backing me, and saying, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah.
So that's what it initially looked like for me.
Yeah.
Now, support looks like many different things over the journey because here's the thing. When you initially start talking, you starting this process, you're not realizing in that space that my going to court, my speaking, my even getting therapy, and which I did, you're not thinking that, hey, this is happening right here and now, but the journey ahead, you
Mhm.
know, the consistency of doing the work, and you are also going to need support for that because as we both know, there's many highs and many low lows
Yeah.
that comes with this, right? And so support started looking different for me over the years, and we will touch on that in a bit. But support comes in the form of many different things for me now.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to, extend a little bit of grace for my parents because I don't want it to, sound like they weren't supportive because they were there for me when I was going through, like my dad was literally sitting on the side of me when I was having to explain to the police officers, this is what happened, right? And it was the most uncomfortable situation in probably to this day, I would still say that, right? You're having to answer these questions that they're asking you, and it's very, very detailed. And it's that in itself is traumatizing. And I'm just like, dang, my dad has to be here and listen to this.
Right.
So that was hard. And then my mom, like the two of them together, like they were showing up for court and whatnot. It's just that we weren't talking about it, right?
Yeah.
They were showing up, but it's like, how do you even interact? Like I don't think they understood how to do that or understood the importance of, for me, I was 13, 14 years old, going through this process. So I don't think that they understood. I don't know what it is when it comes to, Black families and therapy and all of these different things. But it didn't connect that, maybe she does need therapy. Like I think that they look at you and they see you functioning. And so for them, you're okay. And I wasn't really saying I wasn't okay. So I was doing what I did, but I was just doing it a little bit delayed because I mean, everything about me started changing in terms of, my movements became more slow. Like I was
Mm,
a, I always had like a lot of energy. I was like, I would consider myself an extrovert prior to, the things that happened, but it was like an immediate introverted situation. Like I think my entire personality changed. And so, everything that I did became different. right?
Right. Right.
My behavior, my movements, the fact that school was now even a struggle. I couldn't even focus in school. But I think that a lot of times, families don't understand how to help children or others when they're going through this. Okay, we went to the police station. That's their version of help, right? So they're doing their part on in terms of that. Going
Yeah.
to court and doing that, like they're doing that part. So they didn't understand that I probably needed more. So I think I do want to extend grace because I think a lot of families are not educated on how to handle children with care as they go through their process of journeying through their trauma, right? And so I think
Right.
that's a struggle. That's a struggle.
And it's funny, I'm happy you doubled back and you said that they didn't know, because I was going to say that it's not that they didn't think that there was more to this. I think a lot of families just genuinely do not know how to process. They don't know how to help, because it's as secondary survivors, they're in this battle not only in their minds and wondering, how could this have happened on my watch, and blaming themselves as well. Knowing how do I help? And the crazy thing about that, they're so afraid to even hear the details because it makes them so uncomfortable that they would not even ask.
Mhm.
Right. So they honestly just don't know what to do. And so this is how it shows up. And for you, I totally understand and I could relate to what you were saying. I can only imagine you having to sit there and retell the story and the details over and over and over in front of your father. Because I remember even at 30 something years old, I was grown. And it was one of the entire process was hard, Tammy, which I know you know, but it was my having to relive, to retell the story, and you're having to go through the details.
And
And I don't know about you, I was in Jamaica. Well, I'm assuming you were in the Bahamas when this happened.
yeah.
I was in Jamaica having to do this, and their system, love my country, love my people, but girl,
They look behind on time.
their system. So they had these everlasting books that I refer to. That, like, those books have to be like the books that God have writing people name down in.
Same, same in the Bahamas, girl. Same in the Bahamas.
These books are these.
The
I've never
ledgers.
seen stuff like this. And the
Mhm.
crazy part about it, because they're not doing this um using technology or whatever, so for them to write things out, it makes the
Gotta wait.
process that much longer. And then the fact that you have to keep repeating, and then you tell the story to this particular officer, and then someone else has to come in, and you have to go over. And let's not touch on going to court, but one of the most re-traumatizing things for me was the fact that when this process started, my brother, which was many years my junior, he was in the room along with one of my cousins, God bless his heart, because he came as much as he was on the fence with everything, he came. And for my cousin, he said to me after the process, he told me point blank that this was extremely difficult. When I started talking, he immediately started thinking about the family and what is going to happen and how that is projecting on everybody else, not realizing, boy, this have nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
We were that close. So he decided to come. And he said to me, it wasn't until he saw me talking about it and how I broke, because he had known me my whole entire life. We were ridiculously close. And
Yeah.
just like you, I was showing up every day, every time they saw me. I was this happy go lucky person. And now everyone is shocked at me talking and telling the story. But him being there and hearing me have to recount the stories, thankfully, at one point, my brother, well, both he and my brother decided to walk out because it was that difficult to say whatever. And this was a brother and a cousin. So you having to do that in front of dad, I just can't imagine that. But
Yeah.
yeah, going back to the fact that I think that is one of the major issues that we have to contend with, is that families genuinely don't know how to approach this topic.
Yeah. They don't know. They don't know how to approach it. And like what you experience, they don't always believe you as well, right? Because you said that he didn't believe you until you went into depth on the experience because he was sitting there in the room. And I think that a lot of times people don't say anything because they don't feel as if they're going to be believed, right? So they
Right,
don't speak about it. And in a way, that's lack of support, right? Like you don't
right.
want to talk because you're not going to, you have a feeling that you're not going to get the support that you do
That's
need.
fair. And
And
it's, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, for my family, they didn't, I don't think they really believed, you know. I don't
Mm,
really think that they believed the situation. And I think it's because of, you know, their mindset of how I was acting already.
right. And
Mhm.
see, and funny enough, you said that because they're thinking about how you're acting already, not realizing or piecing it together that, hello, the reason why she's acting like this is because this happened, right? And as it relates to my cousin, I don't even think that for him, it's not that he didn't believe me because I knew he knew I wasn't telling a lie. The fact is, for him, I think it came out as he was just torn because here I am talking about someone that everyone in the family loved and respected and saw him as the father figure. He's grandma's husband, so everyone just thought, well, most people thought the world about him, or thought the world of him rather. So this was shocking to him.
Mm,
The hardest part, though, was not my cousin, but it was family members that actually, well, let me get that straight.
mhm,
Relatives that I was really, really close with, that I had already told previous times when I started talking, and this, of course, hit the fan.
mhm.
They were saying that I was lying.
Yeah,
That was the part that was really, it was like a dagger to the heart because I knew they already knew that this had happened. I had already made it clear, but I don't know if it was because of embarrassment, whatever. And again, perceived embarrassed because they took that on.
yeah,
They started calling me a liar and calling me every name out of the book. And yes, I am all sorts of things. And the fact that they didn't believe me. But to be honest, I don't know if it was my age at the point or just the headspace I was in.
mhm,
I couldn't, don't get me wrong, it hurted, but I
mhm,
didn't care. I
yeah,
could not have cared less because I knew for a couple, which was one which I'll speak on, that was very damaging to me, was an aunt that I was very, very close with and loved so dearly. And the first time this thing came up, she was standing right there when her dad admitted to what he had done.
mhm,
So when it started coming out now, and she started telling everybody that I'm lying and I'm wicked and
yeah,
it's a book deal I'm looking for, and all of the, when I tell you that thing shattered me, it
yeah,
really did, because then not only did I really begin to understand the full nature of human beings,
mhm,
that they could literally love you in 1 second and then flip on you the next.
that's the
I
family.
That was hard, but
Yeah,
even with that, I wasn't deterred. I was not deterred because I knew I was telling the truth. I knew they knew. Am I saying that right? I knew that they already knew I was telling the truth. And so it didn't matter. So I didn't get support from them, but amazingly, Tammy, and that's one of the ways that support started showing up for me, because when I started speaking publicly, while it was split down the middle, I lost some family, some relatives, and all of that. But what I gained on the other side of that was complete strangers.
yeah,
Complete strangers not only coming to my defense, but supporting me in ways that the levels of encouragement that I got, whether it was publicly or privately, and let's not shy away from saying that. And we touched on it, alluded to it earlier, is the fact that support will look and show up in many different ways.
yeah, yeah,
Um, I also receive support from loved ones and, again, strangers alike. But here's the thing, you have some people that really, when they say that they're against certain things, they are against it and they're very vocal. They don't care. They will come out to bat with you and whatever. Then you have the silent supporters.
Yeah.
Right? So they'll be in the background. They'll tell you, yes, you're doing the right thing. Keep going, but if they were supposed to step up and say, yes, I am with her, girl,
Mhm.
you ain't ever gonna get, they would leave you hanging out in the streets. You have to be careful there as well. But
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
support is there.
Yeah.
It's just we have to be mindful that yeah, there's silent supporters as well.
Yeah.
But it's all good.
Silent, and some that go in and out of support because they support you one minute and then the actions
That
change
part.
another minute. So like it goes back and forth. Because I had a couple of aunts that was that way, you know, like
Mhm.
they're supportive, but then, you know, they're not as supportive or
And it makes me wonder what is that? Because
yeah,
it's either you're supporting or you're not.
yeah.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know. I don't know. It is what it is. And I think you said something too, that I want to touch on is the fact that the individuals who do these things are loved by others. And so that makes it difficult for them to it makes it difficult for them to believe, sorry,
Right.
that, you know, they did this thing. And that was the situation in my case, you know, like this individual, everybody loved them. So like, why? Like, how could he? You know what I'm saying? And no, he did. He very much did. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those situations as well. And so they're like, oh, I don't want to, you know.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And which brings up a very, very important point because as we were having a discussion before, and we're talking about, how people tend to push this narrative about stranger danger. That's what society tells you. And realizing now more than anything else that no, it's a 90 something percent of children that have been sexually abused know their abuser, right? And I may get the numbers wrong, but it's between 80 and 90 something percent.
It
And
was
the
nice.
sad 90, right? Thank you. And the sad part about it is that it's always someone that's so close to the family, right? And this is how
68% was a family member. So
8% is a family member. And that's what not only makes this so traumatic, but makes it so extremely difficult to deal with because back to the point we were making,
yeah,
when you finally garner the courage to start speaking, the very people that loved you
yeah,
now, because they're also attached to this particular individual.
yeah,
And the weirdest part for me was in my personal experience, I knew it would have been difficult. I already knew that. It was difficult for me because you're conflicted. You also love this person,
mhm,
right? So it puts you in such a space, but then you understand for me, it was my aunt's dad, my cousin's grandfather, it's tough. And I know that it was going to be tough. I knew that. But the truth of the matter is I could no longer allow whatever they were going to experience cloud whatever it is that I needed to do to start my own healing process.
yeah,
Right. And so that's where the conflict comes in and why I understand a lot of people don't do this. But dare I say, you need to anyway, because at some point in time, we have to stop thinking about everyone else, especially when it's causing so many different situations in your life. You're not healed. It's showing up in many ways, which we'll touch on in a different episode. But I think we're going to be talking about manifestation later.
yeah,
But yeah, when it's starting to affect your life, it's affecting your health, your mental state, your everything about you. At some point in time, you have to choose yourself.
yes.
And that's where I got. I just didn't care anymore.
Absolutely. And I think that's a wonderful introduction to go into what support looks like or
Right.
not what it looks like, but why it's important to have support. So we could touch on these specific things. So let's do that. Um, the reason why support is important several reasons. One of them is because it promotes healing, right? Yeah. So we have to be in situations where we have to get the healing that we need after we experience these different types of traumas, especially when you've been raped, molested, abused, any type of sexual assault that has happened. You have to heal. You have to go through a healing journey. This is why you need support, because it's going to be difficult to get to that phase if you have not done that. I know last week, Larissa, you were talking about you worked at the senior citizen home, and even at their age,
My friends.
yeah,
Yeah.
they still did not get the support that they needed for their trauma, and they were still dealing with it in their adult age. And you don't want to allow something like that to happen, right? So I think that it's important that you get support so that you can begin your healing process. That is how you get to thrive and not just survive in the situation,
Right.
right?
Right.
Right.
And because besides all of that, and yes, it's not just in your adult years. As we mentioned, your senior year. These people are on. I mean nothing by this when I say it, but in logical terms, they're on their way out, right? And imagine living your entire life never speaking, never being on that starting that healing journey, and now you're getting to the end of your life and you're still
Mhm.
tormented by all of this.
Mhm.
So promoting healing is so critical, because without, and not just promoting healing but the support that goes along with that, it helps children, and also, dare I say, adults, to feel less isolated,
Yeah,
to relinquish shame and guilt and everything that they have to struggle with as it relates to this trauma, right?
exactly.
So that is why it's so critical for us to start talking and seriously having these conversations and empowering survivors to start your journey to move from just merely surviving to thriving. Another thing that support does is it reduces the risk of further harm,
Yeah.
right? Especially where children are concerned, and sadly for some adults too. But when children do not receive support, especially after levels and layers of abuse, there's so many things that this exposes them to.
Mhm.
One major thing I'm going to touch on is, if we would just pay attention and stop for a second and see what is happening so much in our community right now and our society at large, is the levels of children that are being trafficked,
Mhm.
right? Child sex trafficking. And a lot of this, it's because that is leading from something else, right? The
Mhm.
onset was the abuse that they started. And when we're talking about abuse, and yes, emphasis placed on child sexual abuse, but let's not forget all the other levels of abuse that children are exposed to and experiencing on the daily, whether it's
Absolutely.
just childhood neglect, whether they're in a domestic violence situation, whether it's verbal abuse, physical abuse. The
Mhm.
point is, when children do not get that help and get the support to start them on this journey of accessing what is going on with them, trying to figure out how is this affecting them mentally and all of that, if they do not get that support and are allowed the space to be vulnerable and to tell what is going on, believe me, and well, which we all see anyhow, you don't have to believe me, just open your eyes and pay attention. You will see all of it showing up
Yeah.
as so many different things,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
all negative, by the way. So
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And you touch on child trafficking because a lot of times that happens because of abuse, neglect, all these different things. And, for me, I found it in toxic relationships. And that's how, these traffickers find their victims. It's a toxic relationship, and then they end up, sweeping them off of their feet and doing little things. And, they're like, "Ooh, I'm finally being loved. I'm finally being appreciated." We all want to we all want to feel valued, right? We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. And they do these things so that they can get you to that level so that you can be trafficked. And it's not even just the traffickers, but it's in any type of situation. Another thing that we didn't touch on is, suicide. When you carry the guilt, the shame, the fear, all these different things, that is another way that children want to hurt. They want to harm themselves, right? They don't feel all of these different things. They don't feel seen. They don't feel valued. They don't feel understood. They don't feel these things. And as human beings, we crave these things. We crave relationships where we can be seen. We crave intimacy on all levels. And when we're lacking it in all areas of our lives, it creates dysfunction across the board. And so I think that's important because that's why people end up in these situations where they want to do harm or where they want to hurt themselves. So
Right.
that's important. The other was it teaches them how to cope.
Coping skills. Yeah.
That's where therapy comes.
Right.
There's
Or
therapy.
just having, and when we say therapy, it that's one of the things I tend to come across very often. It's that the moment you say therapy, someone automatically assumes you mean, okay, you have to go sit on someone's couch and you have to do no, there's many, many different forms of therapy. And while I'm a strong advocate for that, and I do promote, yes, taking your butt and find someone's that is so far removed from the situation to go and talk to because it's easier. That person don't know anything about you. They're not attached to your story. They're not invested in any way, shape, or form. So I do promote that. But again, there's many different forms of therapy, right?
Right,
My
real quick.
doing
I want
this,
to say, yeah, real quick, I want to
doing
say,
this is a form of therapy, right?
yeah, yeah. Real quick, I do want to say, because sometimes people don't get therapy because they have trust issues from the trauma that they created. Like, so it takes them a while. It's a long process to get there. They don't trust the therapist. I think that, oh, this therapist is gonna know all of my business. They're gonna, they're not gonna understand what it is that I'm going through. They're like all these different things. But I just want to say really quickly that they are literally trained to help you with your situation.
They're bound.
Um, they're
They can't tell
bound,
the story. They're legally bound.
legally bound, and that's the legally bound part is the reason why I went. So let me just put that out there because I had issues like that. But then I realized no, they can literally go to jail, lose their license if they
That part.
talk my business. Okay. So yeah, so they're legally bound. They legitimately cannot disclose anything unless you're going to harm yourself or harm somebody around you, all these different things, etc.
Right.
But I do want to stress that it is important. Like you have to get past your trust issues because you have to begin speaking. You have to do something about what's happening to you mentally because that's what's more important than just keeping it in. It's making sure that you can function as a full, complete individual.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And one thing I want to add to that, and while I advocate and I promote therapy wholeheartedly, I need people to understand, right? Therapy is not a one-stop shop. I go, I'm healed, and because that is such a myth, misnomer that people believe. Oh, so you've been in therapy, that means you're fine now, right? Nobody. No. Okay.
Yeah.
therapy, it's another tool. It's something to add to your arsenal of ways that all you're doing is learning
Mhm.
coping skills and how to get better at dealing with certain things. And most importantly, it's an outlet to get everything out that's on the inside of you, and for someone that is professionally trained to connect the dots, right? So for me, my severe trust issues that I suffered with for years, I knew in parts that it had to do with my experience, but other
Mhm.
parts of it as to why I was showing up in relationships a particular way and just some other stuff we'll talk about later. All of that was revealed or uncovered for me during therapy. And so, it's again, it's a tool. It's just another tool, and one that I can say it works. It works if you allow yourself and grant yourself the grace and be open to it. It does work. But going back to support, one other thing that I want to touch on is when children, and even adults for that matter, but we're focusing on children right now. But one of the things that not therapy, I'm sorry, support does is it builds resilience,
Yes.
right? It builds resilience in children. When they have that support, they know without you having to even teach them or hit them over the head with it that life is like this. They're going to go through hard things, right? However, if they have that support, they know that, hey, I can get through this.
Mhm.
One of the things that, and Tammy said it, mentioned it earlier, one of the things that I think there would be a major decline in the rates and the numbers that we see in children is suicide. If these children felt comfortable, are made to feel comfortable enough to start speaking about those things that they're really dealing with in safe spaces without judgment and everything that comes with that, you would have less children wanting to commit suicide, or even worse, actually committing the act.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, that was one of the ways it showed up for me. I attempted 3 times, girl.
Yeah.
Thank God it didn't work. But that happened because I never felt safe. I never spoke. I never had any support. And so that was one of the ways that it happened. However, again, that's one of the things that I believe wholeheartedly. It helps children to just know that, okay, regardless of what is going to happen or whatever comes my way, I
Mhm.
know that I will be loved nonetheless. I will be supported. I will not be seen as less than, and all of those things that goes with that.
Yes.
So please.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And another thing is, I'm sorry, it
Mhm.
builds self-esteem. It builds everything that goes along with that. It's just having that support provides a level of safety,
Yes.
children, and again, dare I say adults too, but there's major benefits to just having support.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's a beautiful way that we can wrap that up, because I think that we've touched on so many points that people can understand that if you have experienced trauma, support is absolutely necessary. And you can find that in so many different ways. Last week we touched on tools, and we touched on journaling, and that is a form of support. You know, I didn't
Right,
speak to many people, but I spoke to my journal, right? Girl, me and my journal, we were deep. We were friends. We were friends. But that got me through until I had the courage to start speaking about it. And so, support, what it looks like for us, it might not look like for you, but the importance is that you get it,
right.
because of all the reasons that we just said, all the reasons that we just said. So, as we want to wrap up, is there anything else that you want to add to that, Larissa?
I'm sorry, but I have to throw this in there. One of what support looked like for me in this particular way was during the years that I couldn't speak, and yes, I was talking to my journal and all of that. Another way that I was helped or I was carried through this process, it's the support that came in the way of God
Yes.
and my yelling at him. Like, nobody tell me nothing. And that's why I believe so wholeheartedly in building your own relationship with God, because we had some conversations there
Hmm.
that it's like, listen here.
Yes.
Apparently, you brought me here to suffer and to do
Yes.
all of this. And why? Those moments when, yes, you're not real. And I'm not
Mhm.
liking you in this moment. And we
Mhm.
had those conversations. And though I didn't necessarily hear him back in an audible voice, but when I started feeling, relieved, and I was supported in
Yeah,
many ways. And I thought that was
absolutely.
just something I needed to share because it
Absolutely.
was God, and I can say this without the shadow of a doubt, He kept me and He helped me even when I didn't realize He was helping and
Yes,
what He was doing. But yeah, and
I love
God
that.
was filling at His butt. And
Love that.
thank God.
That
Well,
was
thank
my
you.
freedom too. Yep, that was my freedom too.
And one of the reasons why I hesitate to say that, because I know that it's nuanced in saying, because people automatically hear, oh, you're going to tell me to pray about it. And that is not what I'm saying at all. No, I don't share that narrative or just pray and God will fix it. No, 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 no. The scripture itself tells you.
Faith without works.
Say it again for me so
Faith
people
without works.
can you repeat it again?
Faith without works is
There you go. Faith without
dead.
works. Have faith, scream at God all you want, but you got to do your work.
You got to do your work.
That's for sure.
I love how you said that, like just like that. Just like that. Say it just like you gotta do the work.
You got to
Yes.
do the work, baby. You
Yes,
do.
you do. You do have to do the work. And, remembering that whomever God keeps is well kept, right? Yes, he is going to be your biggest supporter. That's what got by. Before I got to therapy, it was God. He gave me the tools
Even
to
when you
keep,
didn't know what the
even when
tools
I
were.
didn't know it. Even
Right.
when I didn't know it. That's what gave me the courage to be able to say, because God says, do not be silent, but to speak. Why? Because he is always with you. Do not fear him, right?
Ooh,
Hello.
ooh. We church up in here if we don't stop.
Right, right. But yes, all of these different things. So I think that's good. And I think that you needed to hear that. You needed to hear that. I
Wow.
need to continuously hear that
Right. Right.
because it's a process. It's not a one and done. It's a process.
And the fact that you said that, I cannot elaborate on that anymore.
Mhm.
It is a process, it is a journey,
Yes.
but it's one that's worth it.
Yes.
Choose yourself, show up for yourself, and start doing your work. We're not here telling you to, flip your family on its head or whatever the case is. But if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. At some point in time, you have to choose yourself and start doing your work. And as Tammy said, I can't say it enough. It's not one and done, it's a journey. So, yes, you're going to have your very good days where you feel like, yes, I can take on the world and I'm empowered and I can speak. And then those days that you're in your bed and you just like, listen, everybody leave me the heck alone, right? Because I'm just, it's not happening today. But because of therapy, because of God, because of the tools that you now have, you know that I'm going to stay in bed for about 6 hours, but at the end of it, I'm getting up and I'm good to go, right? Opposed to I'm in bed
Stay
and I'm
there.
in bed for weeks on end. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I don't,
You're gonna binge watch every show that's on Netflix.
as for you, baby,
Talking about you good,
I'm good over here. I'm
but
good.
you're really not.
You doing
Okay.
everything in that room. Even listen, don't get me started.
Anyway, but I'm just saying, y'all better go get y'all support. Get your help that you
Find your
need.
team, guys. Find your tribe, whatever that looks like for you. Find a community.
Yes.
What support looks like for me in this setting, finding a sister and a friend in this young lady over here.
Yes.
Yeah,
We became each other's support. never have I ever had someone that could relate so much to my story.
Let's not start. Let's not start because we're never gonna start.
Yeah, we'll never end.
That's just me.
But
Another
we're
time.
gonna, yes, another time. But we are gonna wrap up here. We thank you so much for tuning in to this mini series. We appreciate your being here because the fact that you're watching means that you're supposed to be watching, means that you're supposed to be getting something from this, means that you need to start working on that healing that you need. Otherwise, why be here, right? So take these tools, use it, and apply it to your life. We just want to thank you again for tuning in. We appreciate you. We love you. Reach out if you feel like you need to talk. Journey to Free one or at Sexually Saved, reach any one of us. We are here. We're available to help you go through that process. And we love you. So anything else you want to say?
I was just going to add that. Feel free, please, by any means, just reach out. My correct name is Larissa Roan. She's Tammy LaCroix. Did I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just call me Tammy.
Jump into her email, not or email, or inboxes rather. Find me on Twitter, Rizzy Roan, or on Facebook, and reach out. We're here. And we genuinely mean that. We're here. We'll be your support until we can lead you off to someone else. But thank
Right.
you. Thank you guys for joining us. And please, this series again is called Beyond Surviving. We're moving together and we're journeying toward freedom, moving beyond surviving to thriving. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right.